this is a very consequential visit by Li Qiang to Australia. Just as late last year we had a visit by Anthony Albanese, Australia's Prime Minister, to China. And both of these visits, I think, represent the restoration of a strong and productive relationship between these two countries. It's an important relationship economically, but it's also important, I think, for China and Australia, as we live in the same region, to get along and to understand each other better.
I mean, China is not only Australia's biggest trade partner, but also holds a major trade surplus. How would you characterize this economic relationship between the two?
Well, it's been very valuable to both countries for decades, actually. Australia and China are quite economically interdependent. They're also complementary to each other. Australia provides to China the things that it needs, and vice versa. China provides to Australia what it needs economically. So there's a benefit here to both sides, but Australia and China economically benefit from cooperation. They also economically benefit from the regional architecture of APEC, of RCEP, the ability of the Asia-Pacific region to work together within trade rules and within regional organizations.
How do both sides safeguard this very important balance, both economically and diplomatically?
This is the question for Australia and China. While they're economically interdependent and while there are very strong people-to-people links, there is a security dilemma, and that is that Australia is an ally of the United States and has been since World War II for very sound and strong reasons. And equally, of course, China has different interests from the United States equally for sound and strong reasons. So there is a dilemma at the heart of the relationship, and Australia and China need to be able to understand each other's needs and imperatives, respect each other, and work together. It is a challenge. It's not easy, and from time to time there will be disputes and misunderstandings. The last few years we had too many of those misunderstandings, and it appears that we're back on a productive track again.
I just wanted to follow up on that and press you on this issue. Do you think Australia has the strategic independence and autonomy to determine what type of relationship it wants with China, free from what others in the region might think and might want Australia to do?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's the challenge for an Australian government to pursue its national interests and to find a way to balance its interests with other major powers. Now, Australia has a strong security relationship with the US and a strong economic relationship with China. It's a classic dilemma, if you like, if it's being pulled in different directions by other powers. So Australia needs to determine its own national interests. I think we've seen in the last couple of years, since the election of the Albanese government, an Australian government much more clear-eyed about its national interest, and that is good relationships with both of those countries.
Australia is home to some of the world's largest recoverable deposits of critical minerals, which are used in manufacturing solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. China is one of the leaders in green technology. Do you see more green cooperation between the two? How should they join hands to best utilize this complementarity?
This puts everything into context when we think about the climate challenge that the world faces and the potential for China to play a leading role here in the green transition to a more sustainable global economy. China is developing the technology, the ability to roll out electric vehicles, which Australia welcomes. It's not afraid of them, such as the United States and the European Union. And Australia, as you say, has the critical minerals, the lithium and other ingredients that are very important for those supply chains to feed into China's ability to lead us into this green transition. So there's a lot of common ground here, potentially, between Australia and China. Let's hope that we can move this forward and we can find more productive cooperation for the green transition. We need to speed up this green transition because actually this is the biggest threat that the world faces, that the disruptions to our economies and to our societies from climate risk are very real. We know this in the Asia Pacific. We know climate change will impact on China, on Australia, very badly unless we act very quickly in this decade to make sure global warming is slowed. And so China rolling out the solar panels, the electric vehicles, this is absolutely to be welcomed. And Australia, by the way, has a long tradition of supporting free trade. It's not a country that is inclined towards protectionism, at least not in the last half century. And so there's a real opportunity here for China and Australia to collaborate, because Australia has no protectionist agenda, which arguably is what might be partly what's going on with the United States and the European Union, a move away from free trade, which is very dangerous for both China and Australia, who benefit from free trade enormously.
Another topic that many people are watching out for on the Premier's visit this time is education. China is the biggest market for Australian education services. Can you help us understand the appeal of an Australian education? How competitive is it compared to an American education or a European education? And how important is educational exchanges between the two?
I've just spent some time in Sydney and in my hometown of Hobart in Australia as well, and you see the benefits to Australia of Chinese students. They make such a positive impact culturally and academically and, of course, economically. But I think there's a great benefit for Chinese students as well in coming to Australia, because it's a place that is very welcoming. It's a place where there is strong cultural connection between China and Australia. And, of course, Australia is very fortunate to have very high-quality universities. So I would think that this is an area of our cooperation that will continue and will strengthen and deepen over time.
China and Australia have had a bumpy road in recent past, to say the least, and we're absolutely happy to see them move back on track. But what would be the key in maintaining stable diplomatic relations in the future?
I think tolerating difference is something that we talk about a lot in Australia. Being a very multicultural society, Australians are well aware of the need to understand and respect difference. However, even Australians from time to time can forget and can make cultural blunders. And equally, I think on both sides, we can sometimes misunderstand each other. So a visit like this from a leader from China to Australia, and future visits from Australian leaders to China, these are important symbolic opportunities to demonstrate to the whole community, yes, we're different, but actually we can get along and we can work together. That's fundamentally important.
Can we end with one more question, because we are, of course, monitoring the Chinese Premier's trip to Australia this time. And I believe you are monitoring this trip as well. What are you looking out for, particularly on this trip?
Well, one thing that Australians are very pleased about is the offer of 2 more pandas for Adelaide Zoo. That's very important, I think, for our friendly relationship. But really, most importantly, I think in the future is that we do get to know each other even better than we already do, and that we find areas of common ground, such as the green transition, such as university collaboration, other business cooperation. We're heading into rough times. The world, and I think our own economies, Australia and China, are in difficult times. We've got to find the areas of opportunity where we can do business together and we can get to know each other better.